40 years ago in Nairobi.
Tunataka Kenyatta wachiliwe. Baba taifa alipotoka gerezani aliwakuta wajumbe wetu wametengana vibaya sana. Kisha yake baba taifa alikata shauri moja kujiunga na chama chetu KANU. Aliongoza wajumbe paka Ulaya, kifika huko alipigwa na mayai yaliyooza. Baba taifa kujali alishinda na kurudi na katiba ya nchi yetu hapa Kenya. Ilipofika Disemba 12, 63 mzee wetu alinyakua uhuru Kenya. Kisha yake Disemba 64 mzee wetu alipandisha bendera ya jamhuri. Mzee wetu alituomba tusahau yaliyopita, badala yake tuijenge nchi yetu. Alisema harambee tuungane, na hivi sasa tumejua harambee ni umoja. Asante baba wetu, kweli we, asante baba wetu.
Quite a time indeed where we did see Nairobi back in 40 years in the hands of time. And as Nairobi's landscape continues to rapidly change, how has the economy and population kept up? Well, KTN's Ashley Mazuri put together some numbers, and let's now take a look at some of the key indicators around gross domestic product and the population. So let's begin with the population numbers in reference to Kenya 40 years on. Well, the population for the last, since 1963, well, that is how the trends have been. In 1963, Kenya's population was at 8.9 million. 1973, it hit 12.53 million. 1983, it was at 18.24 million. 1993, the population hit 25.85 million people. In 2003, the population stood at 33.81 million. And of course, in 2013, it was at 44.83. And the other one there, finally, at 2016, was at 48.46 million. Quite a jump since 1963, keeping up with the trends. Let's now look at the GDP per capita. Where was Nairobi? Well, in 1963, Kenya's GDP stood at 93.26 billion. In 1973, it nearly tripled to 251.6 billion. And of course, this was a time where Kenya's economy was flourishing with the coffee sector as well as the aviation industry under the East African Airways. And 1983, the GDP was at 600.8 billion. And in 1993, it was at 578.6 billion. And in 2003, it was at 1.49 trillion. Quite a big jump, nearly 3 times after when President Mwai Kibaki took over from retired President Daniel Arap Moi. That was between 1993 to 2003, where we did see a major economic jump where the economy grew by about 8%. In 2013, the economy hit 5.54 trillion GDP. And in 2017, it's starting at 7.53 trillion. Quite a lot happening when you look at the numbers. Well, interesting numbers to look at, but let's make some sense out of this. And of course, Kenya's debt has been growing over time, and this has been a key area of focus. And we now bring in Dominic Omondi, a business writer with the Standard newspaper, joining us from our City Center studios as we take stock 40 years later. Good afternoon, Dominic. What do you make of Kenya's economy currently at a time where we are seeing some interesting developments, especially when it comes to the growth of GDP as well as the population?
Abby, again, please, my microphone had, okay.
So Dominic, if you can hear me, today we are just looking at back in the hands of time, 40 years. Has the economy grown to the degrees that the founding fathers had anticipated?
Abby, thank you very much, Abby, for having me. And thank you very much for having us discuss this topic that I think is very, very important to the country right now, with all that is going on in the country right now, and whether we are not very sure whether the economy is growing or whether we've experienced some progress over the years, or in fact in the last 40 years. But perhaps we need to put some of these things into perspective, and borrowing from what we've been covering as business journalists and financial journalists in the last 5 or so years. Are we better off 40 years later since the founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, died? And the answer is a mixed one, really. On the one hand, you have a, sorry, excuse. On the one hand, you have a situation where the economy is really growing in terms of the GDP, where you take the total sum of goods and services that are produced in the economy. You can see that there are more roads that are being built, the railway, there's the internet, there are things that are happening that were not there 40 years ago. But at the same time, there are new challenges that are coming with this growth that we are seeing. We see things like traffic jam, we see things like crime, we see things like, we had challenges like diseases that were never there, like AIDS, and the struggle that we had to deal with them. We see things that come really with growth, and the issue really is whether we've been able to deal with some of the challenges that come with this growth. But at the same time, you need to look at some of the countries that we were at par with, like 40 years ago, or even 50 years ago, and how they've grown. When you look at it in that context, then you realize that really the growth that we've been experiencing is not that optimal, and it hasn't had the effect that the common mwananchi would say, well, as a result of the growth that I'm seeing, there is increased number of plates on the table. There is, I'm getting to dress well. Transport is easy. I have a job. My child can go to school. There's healthcare and all that. So we still have a long way since our founding fathers, set us on the stage to growth. We still need to do more.
Of course, looking at the pictures, Nairobi 40 years ago and the Nairobi of today, there's a remarkably huge difference when it comes to infrastructure. And of course, Dominic, looking at the appetite towards bridging the infrastructure deficit in the country, the various governments in power have really tried to seek for funding from be it the West, be it the East, just to improve the country's infrastructure. And of course, one of the notable projects in Kenya's economy is the standard gauge railway, which saw the government spend close to 327 billion shillings, with the Chinese government financing this project 75%, Kenya government by 25%. But really, Dominic, from an infrastructure point of view, we've also made some strides, but on the other hand, we've accumulated debt. As much as I wouldn't like to be cynical, well, really, the numbers are out there, and as to how we can interpret them really depends on where you stand. But from where I stand, of course, most of the economists that you'll speak with, they will tell you that there is a study that shows a correlation between investment in infrastructure and the growth of the economy. So the more you invest in infrastructure, the more you invest in roads, railways, ports, and all that, you get to grow the economy because you open up the country and people can invest and all that. But how do you invest in this infrastructure? You can either invest, use your own money, that means your taxes, or you can borrow. And what we've been doing really is much of a good chunk of this infrastructural growth has been debt-driven. The issue is whether we've taken up so much debt to the extent that it's becoming unsustainable. What the government is saying is, well, you can see the result of our investment, you can see the roads, and you can see all that. And at the same time, what they are saying is that really, it's not like we cannot repay those debts. Our economy is still very intact. It's doing well. Our exports are doing well. But there are those who are saying that we've reached a limit and we need to go slow on our debt uptake. And that includes none other than IMF, which in recent times has given Kenya really very stringent conditions as far as the difference between what you collect in taxes and what you spend, I mean, the budget deficit is concerned. So they're saying that you need to do more to curb the debt. Yes. All right. Many thanks there, Dominic Omondi, talking to us 40 years later with perspective around the economy and, of course, a mixed bag of fortunes. The country has made strides. And in equal measure, the country has a lot of other emerging issues. Thank you so much, Dominic, for giving us those insights. Well, let's move on to some other stories now. And the downfall of Kenya's oldest sugar company, Mumias Sugar, continues to cause unease among employees. The brand is the only stock trading at below 1 Kenya shilling on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Last year, the plant shut down for maintenance amid piling losses and cane shortages. Despite reopening in October, cane shortages has seen its operations come to a halt, and stock will run out unless the milling wing is reopened. The board of directors has given a directive that employees go on unpaid leave for 3 months while plans for reviving the operations continue. Francis Wangala, the secretary of the Kenya Sugarcane Workers Union, has raised his objections to this move.
My take is that I will not support such an idea. I will not endorse such an idea, and I will not sit with the management of Mumias Sugar Company to discuss an idea of sending employees to go home on unpaid leave for 3 months.
46 suspects have been arrested following raids at 3 unlicensed petrol stations in Salga, Nakuru County. The Energy Regulatory Commission, in collaboration with officers from the Directorate for Criminal Investigation and General Service Unit, have recovered approximately 1,000 liters of contaminated fuel that was stored in jerry cans and drums. While the suspects are expected to be arraigned in court and the site set to be demolished. Well, we're going to go for a quick commercial break. After the break, we'll be talking about mentorship for SMEs and what is KCB doing differently to tap into this space. Don't want to miss that conversation coming up shortly.